My story begins about 6 years ago. I was a frequent and dedicated customer of a locally owned smoke and vape shop in my hometown. The owner heard me say I was looking and offered me a job. It will have to be under the table, and I can't pay more than $10 an hour. I was just happy to be out of the house and seeing someone other than the kids and family. So the owner spent a day training me, gave me her cell number and door keys, then told me to call if I had any questions. That was it. Not other info besides, call me if you need pricing. It was kind of a sink or swim thing. They then started another business in another state. My shop was in California, and they opened another biz on the other side of the country. I went from Friday and Saturday to full-time. I went 2 months without being paid because they just never came home. I finally told them, look, I am basically running the place alone. I can do all the ordering and whatnot, send you it for approval, and then you can just stay there and pay me via Zelle. They said yes to all of it, except for the pay part. Instead, they would have their family friend, T, check the books and receipts, then check my hours, then pay me up to that date, every 2 weeks. T got paid quite handsomely, but also took whatever she pleased from the shop too. I took note of everything she took, how long she was there, and sent all of it to the owner, Lisa. T did not like that, because it was all taken out of her pay, so she started being busy and not showing up to pay me when she was supposed to. Instead of every 2 weeks, it was every month or every 5 or 6 weeks, and I had to text my boss to be for an advance of pay to get gas. So, from 2 days a week to 7 days a week with 10 hours days. Lisa and her hub refused to pay for expensive software, so I did all the supply lists, ordering, and tax stuff on my Google Drive, and sent the info they wanted by email. Eventually, I began to get calls that I had the wrong music playing on the stereo. I played reggae, and she wanted hardcore rap. That she wanted that or this customer out now, which I generally ignored because they were paying customers after all, or things like that. I began updating and improving the shop at their request, all on my own dime that they swore to reimburse, which brought in a bunch of customers and new stock. Our CBD section and customer base bloomed. Our vape section went from 2 shelves to an entire wall, and people from other cities came to our shop because I could repair almost anything that was broken. Our water tobacco pipes area became huge, with hand-blown glass pieces from famous and very well-known artists on sale. From my connections, they got them hella cheap and boosted that price 400% to sell them. Basically, I took a small town, rinky-dink vape and smoke shop and make it hugely successful, very profitable, and well-known across the state. All this time I was told I would be getting a percentage of the profits and that I was family, and they always treat family well, with profit sharing being done at Christmas. Christmas comes, and I am told, our other biz is doing bad. Can we pay you the percent in 6 months? I agreed. More the idiot, I covered happened, but we kept our heads above water, becoming listed as a necessary business. I pointed out their business license still listed them as selling food and snacks, even though they didn't. So we stayed open. All the other shops cut their hours or closed, but we were pulling in cash like never before. Tea was still coming sporadically, and I was working my ass off, but since I loved the shop and my customers, I tolerated it. But as I was massively overworked, I eventually paid for it. I was admitted into the hospital for 2 weeks for exhaustion and a heart condition that the exhaustion made worse. The whole time I was in there, my boss kept calling and making me prove I was in the hospital. I had calls constantly from T, who filled in. And just in general, Lisa was pissy as hell I was in the hospital and not her shop. I get out and back in the shop, and she asked me to work on a huge project for her. Scan 5 years worth of register receipts, enter the daily totals for all 5 years into a spreadsheet separated by year, cash, credit, CBD cash, CBD credit report, total bank deposit, hours worked, discounts given, etc. Took me 3 weeks to do it all. Saved to my Google Drive, then emailed to Lisa. Never thought about it again. She calls me, frantic because the accountant said it looked like we made way too much during COVID. I told Lisa that we had been the only shop open. That was the difference. She demanded I resend the spreadsheets, but only the part for that year, 2020. I do. Then, out of nowhere, she fires me, sends in tea with T's daughter, my replacement, and tells me to pack up and leave. No final pay, no reimbursement for the profit sharing. Nothing. I called Lisa and she tells me something that pisses me off to this day. You are bringing in the wrong kind of people. I did work that hard to update and open that place for you to fill it with. F slur for LGBTQ. And N-word. That is it. And that she would settle up my last pay later. She did. I was pissed. I left. I am a lesbian. She knew that. When our store was at its worst during COVID, the LGBT community came together and supported the shop because I was there and we all helped one another. Our biggest and best paying customers were LGBTQ. So, I let all of them know what was said. I also told a few well-placed people about what Lisa had said during our phone call. I also had numerous texts where she had screen-capped the security feed and pointed out people to run off, who strangely had all been posy. I also told the leader of the local LGBTQ association and the Chamber of Commerce leaders what had been said and showed my proof. As they were former customers of mine, they were appalled and spread it far and wide, utterly destroying their customer base. A month after firing me, she called, apologizing for the firing and making up excuses for not paying me, then asking where I had saved that spreadsheet. I told her that it was all on my Google Drive. She said if I sent it to the accountant again, she would settle up. Just don't send her 2020. She already has that one. So, after making my life miserable for years, putting me in the hospital, and then firing me just to PAT's DAGGER $5 and AK or more. Yeah, I am taking my revenge. She gave me the number of her accountant so that I could make sure the info got to her. I called N's accountant and asked her, can you send me what you do have? I don't want you to have to go through duplicate documents if you don't have to. See, I knew that Lisa had been tweaking numbers and figures so that her other biz, medical marijuana, could funnel through the store and be seen as legit. See, if you sell medical marijuana, you couldn't really put it into a normal bank, because if the feds wanted to, they could seize it because it is still federally illegal, and banks are under federal rules. You had to prove that the money didn't come from selling MedMG to get it back, which could take years. There are banks that deal solely with people in the marijuana business, but even the cheapest account at the cheapest institution had a $1,000 a month flat fee. This was back in 2020 though. Maybe it's different now. My boss was not one to pay money like that just for a bank account, so she was laundering it through the store. Her accountant thought the numbers were suspicious, but had no proof. Until now. I was sent all the spreadsheets that Lisa had sent her, and was she in trouble? She was claiming that our little store was making over $10 a day more than we really were. And it all started happening in, you guessed it, 2020. So I accidentally sent her the real spreadsheets for 2020, with all the scanned receipts and the credit reports scans and the bank deposit scans. All the info needed to really blast Lisa into the stratosphere. The accountant called and asked me, are these all real? Are you sure these are the right figures? I said yep. All she needed to do was click on the day, and it hyperlinked you to all that day's info. Register receipt for the day, the square breakdown for the CBD sold that day, and the bank deposit and credit report receipts. I told her that these were the fully updated and accurate info for that year. I remember the accountant sounded stunned. She disliked my boss as much as I did for her lies, late payments, and utter contempt she treated her with. I emailed Lisa and told her all the info was sent, and that I was waiting for the payment as promised. Surprise, surprise, she blocked me, and no payment went through. As I was paid under the table, it was as she said, she and her husband, and her best friend, and her new worker said, so it was the least I could do to take her and her lying ass down. I also looked up the IRS tips email and sent them copies of the real and altered files along with a copy of their business licenses. They would ask me to text them copies of them and their tobacco license, and then also called code enforcement and let them know that their fire alarm system didn't work, that they had no emergency exit, and their extinguisher has been serviced in 4 years. They just sent a friend to fake it. I turned them into the FDA website for selling to underage customers. The new cashier was selling to underage all the time, and then sent in an anon tip that they were selling carts and wax they had made at their new business on the East Coast and were selling out of the shop. The fallout was glorious. They were shut down by code enforcement and the fire department for having black mold on the walls. Due to leaks they refused to fix, exposed wiring, no up-to-date servicing on the fire alarm system, and the fire extinguisher was inoperable. They were shopped by the FDA and had to pay some pricey fines for 3 different underage sales and had their tobacco license pulled. Right now, the IRS is doing a complete audit of the last 10 years of the store's taxes, and they shut the store's doors for good about 2 months ago. The bad part, I never got to hear what happened to their East Coast medical marijuana business. Huh. Oh well. Them's the breaks, I guess. Edit. People are commenting on doormat and sue for wages / turn into the labor board. As to the doormat, yeah. When I started there, I was in a mentally and verbally abusive relationship. I kicked them out my last year there, and also discovered my backbone. That is when I started asking questions about my pay and such. As to the labor board and suing, I was receiving food stamps, but reporting all my income as self-employed income. I was told that it was illegal to do that. I'm thinking about talking to a lawyer about it all, as I have all the texts with my hours and pay for my former boss saved on my old phone. Heh. UPDATE. So, I have returned from the smokiest corners of the Central Valley to post a wee update on what has been going on. As for T, I finally settled my paybacks for her. She was the manager of a red shirt wearing crafts supply shop. Her husband and Lisa's husband had an agreement that T's husband, would take all those East Coast stamped THC carts, waxes, and flour and sell them at unlicensed sessions. T would often get off work and go help her husband man the booth. Then the two of them kept 50% of the money and sent the rest back to Lisa and her husband. Well, a friend of mine happened to see them at a sesh, took a pic of them, and sent it to me. Can you believe that T was still wearing her work shirt and name tag? She must have just gotten there, I guess. Anyways, friend sent me multiple photos, with the product they were selling was clearly THC items, with pics of her handing items and taking cash from people. We did make sure to blur out everyone but her and her husband's faces, just to be safe. I opened a new email account and sent those photos to Red Shirt Crafts, store employment and contact us sites. Gave them her name, store location, and the days she had been working at that session. 2 weeks later, Grapevine said that she had been fired for being in uniform while selling illegal unlicensed THC. How sad. I finally got the settlement or payoff from the IRS for the tip I sent them. It felt dirty. Like the money just didn't feel gainfully acquired. So my friend and I took some and purchased what we needed to try and start up our own biz, paid off some bills, and donated a hefty amount to the local LGBTQ+ center and a gang intervention group. They do some amazing work out here for kids to get them and keep them out of gangs. The shop was finally sold off. The new owner is a man who owns a few other smoke shops in town, who Lisa had a visceral hatred for, because she is racist, yeah, no. But his was the best offer, so they grabbed it like a drowning man grabs a flotation device. Since the sale, Word spread that it had truly changed owners, and business doubled within the first month. He isn't getting near the same numbers I got, but then I'm not there, and he runs things way differently than I did. Grapevine also told me Lisa was considering suing him, thinking he was the reason her shop tanked, so he could buy the shop and location cheaper, but was dissuaded by her lawyer. Ha, ha. As for my friend and I starting our own business, sigh. The biz never ended up taking off. We gave it a good shot, but food carts are an overly saturated market here. We still do fundraising and catering with it, though, so it wasn't a complete waste. We bill ourselves as dinner and a show, and make fusion cuisine like chicken shawarma burritos with mjadara and hummus, vegetarian teriyaki, or chili bean-filled onigiri. Stuff like that. Sounds strange, but this is a uni town, and it is pretty popular. Just not popular enough to justify a storefront, or even a food cart. We would play 80s and 90s music and sing and dance while cooking, tell jokes and stories. It was a blast. Ah well, fun while it lasted. But things are quiet now. Lisa's entire family moved back to where their East Coast operation is. Not doing too well now, and they got in trouble when it was shown that their East Coast only products were being sold out west. Fines galore, to the point they had to sell off their Cali property to cover them all. T and her husband Jay moved there with them, and I heard they are working with Lisa's husband in their grow operation. Lol at that. So, got my revenge, did some good to balance my karma, and had fun doing it. The end.
Next story.
Ronnie was a serial cheater throughout high school, but he was more than that. He was manipulative. He would blow through relationships, typically 4 at a time. They would only ever last a week to a couple months before the girls would catch him cheating. He'd proceed to leak their nudes or spill their secrets and move on to a new demographic of women. He was charismatic and scapegoated his problems onto his dying father. It didn't matter anyhow. He would destroy the victim's reputation until they weren't trusted anyways. Despite this, I was in love. I was his side piece through it all. Morally, I knew it was wrong, but I had never been in love before. Besides, he wasn't lying to me like the other girls. He was honest about the fact he was cheating. I was special. I stuck it out. 2 years later, and he's fallen in love with me too. Or so I thought. He vowed to give up cheating, even gave up porn just to have me love him back. I accepted it. We planned to marry. He was always so smart about his manipulation. When friends blocked me randomly or called me abusive, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. When people began to become aware of deep personal secrets, I thought maybe I had slipped up during a conversation. No one ever told me Ronnie had called me abusive, a cheater, or a liar. I never knew he accused me of being the things he secretly was. He would insult me late at night, before bed, and then claim he didn't remember in the morning. He would slip sly comments into our talks, just enough to make me doubt myself but never question him. He was a master at gaslighting until I hated myself and only wanted to please him. I was head over heels in love, despite all of it. He would casually slap me, never when I was upset, but when I said things he didn't like. He would slap me across the face, and I would be too shocked to speak. He followed it up by laughing and playing it off as okay to do, or a joke, so I wouldn't fight back. If I expressed it was wrong or told anyone, he said I was misunderstanding a playful tap. Halfway through our relationship, I followed work to another state and maintained a LDR with him. It was my dream. I wanted so badly to stay. But after 8 months, I gave up my home, my pets and my job to move 1,000 miles across the country to live with him again. I had literally nothing and was absolutely penniless. 3 months after this, I caught him cheating. He had asked a girl on a date via an alt Twitter account. I was hurt, but ultimately it wasn't so bad, so I forgave him. The seed of doubt was already planted, however. 2 months later, I snooped through his phone, and noticed he had several Reddit accounts saved to Chrome. I vaguely recalled he used Reddit to view porn before, and I got a bad feeling in my stomach. I began guessing his common email/password combos. I got 5 hits total. They were more than I expected. I figured maybe he was lying about not watching porn, which is not a big deal to me. But for 6 months, he had been using these accounts to cheat on me using hookup and porn subreddits. I confronted him. He screamed, telling me he had already apologized to me for cheating a few months ago, and I needed to quit making him sad. That he had already said sorry, and I wasn't going to get anything else. He explained that he had continued to cheat because he feared I would leave, and he wanted a second option. I spent a week and a half sobbing. I had nothing but this man, and I had never been good enough for him. I was destroyed. He screamed at me nearly every day, telling me my crying was annoying, that my depression made him uncomfortable, telling my friends I was guilt-tripping him over something that didn't happen. Finally, I snapped. I had wasted all of my high school and early adult years with a man who did nothing but walk on me. I went back to Reddit and counted every person he had flirted with or exchanged messages with. I began to voice record every conversation, screenshot every text. Next, I downloaded Tinder and Bumble. For every girl he cheated on me with, I fucked a guy behind his back. When we went out with friends, I began to act more and more sad and slowly dropped in conversation how Ronnie had been yelling at me the night before and that it had upset me. I began to vent to his friends and show them every screenshot. Then I emailed his mother, his grandparents, and his work voice recordings of him screaming at me. I asked his boss if his company supported domestic violence. I cried to his mother, and she held me as I vented my frustrations, explaining how she had been cheated on by Ronnie's father. Ronnie began to scapegoat again. He told me he was sick in the head and his depression was causing him to act like that. I knew he was attempting to gaslight me. When we were young, I was so in love with him that I saved almost every photo and text he had sent me to a OneDrive. I found all the times he had admitted to leaking nudes, cheating and ruining girls' lives. I got in contact with each of the girls, making one big group chat and sending them every bit of evidence I could find. These were then posted all over Facebook. He had dreams of getting into politics. I joined every political group in our area and pretended to be interested in joining. I befriended the members and casually dropped into conversation how Ronnie had cheated on me and verbally abused me and ruined other people's lives. They would inquire more. I would vent and show them the mountain of evidence I had collected. Ronnie was still unaware I had done it. He spent the night screaming and crying about how no one liked him, and he wasn't sure why. He had lost his job. His friends and family wouldn't speak to him. He was being publicly shamed on social media, and his political group had ousted him. I finally dropped it onto him that I had done it, and I was leaving. During all this, I had secretly removed what little money I had from his bank account and contacted distant relatives and asked for a place to stay. I was leaving. He didn't have anything left to abuse or manipulate. I don't have a solid ending for this. I just wanted to say fuck you, Ronnie. I wasted my youth being abused, and I won't stand for it anymore.